Hello, 622 mathematicians. It's great to have you back here. Let's take a look at what our learning target for today is. Our learning target for today is I can solve equations involving x squared. So let's take a look and break apart that learning target. Solving equations, that's something we've been doing for a long time. But the kicker is this time our variable can be to the second power. And so we're going to take a look at how those types of equations differ. So let's take an example. If x squared equals 25, I'm thinking to myself, what could I fill in for x, take it to the second power, or multiply by itself to get 25? Now, if you're a super McSmart, you might already know what my x could be. But we're going to go ahead and still use all of our good work that we've learned on solving equations. So we're going to take a look at, hey, what inverse operation is there for squaring something that is going to allow me to get my x all by itself? Because that's what we're always trying to do when we solve an equation. So the inverse operation to squaring something is taking the square root. So if I take the square root of it, I'm asking what number is it that I'm multiplying by itself to give me this x squared? Well, in this case, that would just be x. And good equation solving, I know that if I do it to one side of my equation, I must do it to the other. So if I look there, I think, what's the square root of 25? So I'm thinking, what number can I multiply by itself and get 25? Now, here's the thing. I know something. I know that 5 times 5 gives me 25, but I also know that there's another number that gives me 25 when I multiply by itself, and that is -5. So my solutions to my equation, I think, are 5 or -5. And now, because I'm such an extraordinary mathematician, I'm going to make sure I check my answer by filling 5 in for my x. So if I take 5 squared, 5 times 5, I get 25. And if I take -5 and I square it, I do -5 times -5. I know that -5 times -5 is also positive 25. So sure enough, I am correct, which of course makes the drum roll and the fireworks go off because I am so extraordinary. If I go down a little bit, I'm going to try another example power. Let's make it a little bit harder. Here we go. So I might have a problem that looks like this. 3x squared equals 27. Now, this is the same kind of equation, so I can still draw a line of my equals. I'm going to keep my two sides of my equation balanced, of course, but I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the fact that I have my x squared, but I have also attached it this multiply by 3. And what I say to myself is, no problem, because I know the inverse operation to multiply by 3. To get rid of a multiply by 3, I divide by 3, because 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 1 times x squared is just x squared. And so then I also do it to the other side. 27 divided by 3 gives me 9. So now I have x squared equals 9. So now I use the inverse operation to squaring, which is taking the square root, which gives me a plain old x. If I do it to one side, I have to do it to the other. The square root of 9 is 3. So x equals 3. Or -3, because -3 times -3 is also 9. So let's take a look and check both of those and make sure that they're both going to work in my equation. So if I check it, I fill 3 in. 3 times 3 squared. 3 squared, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. And so then I fill in my -3. 3 times -3 squared. -3 times -3 gives me 9. And then 9 times 3 gives me my 27. And sure enough, I am a rock star. Here we go. Moving on. Let's try one more. You can't get fireworks on every problem. Let's look at one more. All right, this one looks a little trickier, a couple more operations. So again, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line on my equals to keep it balanced. I look at my x squared. I have attached a multiply by 2 and a subtract 3. Remembering back to my good two-step equation solving skills, I know that I always have to get rid of the addition or subtraction first. So I'm going to get rid of that subtract 3. The inverse operation to subtract 3 is add 3. And so I add 3 to both sides. That's because a negative 3 plus 3 gives me 0. And I bring down my 2x squared. I take a look. I have 5 plus 3. 5 plus 3 gives me an 8. Now I have multiply by 2. To undo multiplication, I use division. And I divide. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. 1 times x squared gives me x squared. I almost have it all by itself. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. Now I use that last step that we've been talking about, taking the square root as the inverse operation to squaring something. And that leaves me with an x all by itself. And the square root of 4 is 2. 2 times 2 gives me 4, or negative 2. So my solution to my equation is 2 or negative 2. Of course, this time I also have to check it out. I fill in 2 for my x squared. I do 2 times 2 squared minus 3. I got to make sure I follow my order of operations here when I'm solving. I do my exponents first. 2 squared, 2 times 2 is 4. And then I multiply it by 2, which is going to give me 4 times 2 is 8. And then I take 8 minus 3, which gives me 5. Good stuff. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and fill in my second solution to my equation, which is negative 2. 2 times negative 2 squared minus 3. Negative 2 times negative 2 gives me positive 4. 4 times 2 gives me 8, and 8 minus 3 gives me 5. And there you have it. I got the same answer again, which makes me smile. Woo! So we have good stuff. We really have worked hard. We've looked at a varying degree of difficulty of all equations that we solved equations involving x squared. Thanks a lot for joining me, and I hope to see you guys back here again.